Hello, everyone. Dr. Rodney Unmasked and Inspired. I'm so looking forward to bringing to you this next episode with Jeff Henry. It is an engaging conversation around the importance of solitude. Yes, solitude. Almost unheard of in times like this, but I think you'll find this conversation to be one that will be inspiring to you. It has been for me. So please join us. And thank you for sharing this information with others as well and subscribing to our YouTube. In the studio with a good brother, a dear brother, Jeffrey Henry, who lives in South Carolina, is a dear brother, one of the people that I have drawn close to out of a community of men who meet twice a month. That community of men called Above the Rim. He and I have formed a bond over the years, and we have found that there is a number of things that men need to talk about, and we do that in private. And I think it's important to take some of our conversations that we've had and put it in a public format. It's that important. So, by introduction, Jeff Henry, again, lives in South Carolina. He is a veteran. By the way, we just completed our Memorial Day and hope that he had a wonderful day. I think he did. But he is a veteran that has served, a combat veteran who served in Iraq, Desert Storm, and also in Afghanistan. So he is a man who has many experiences. And he's also served as a New York police officer um, undercover. He has so many things that he has learned and also have participated in terms of his life journey. Jeff is also a recent divorcee. He has experienced the uh, difficulty of relationships that have not turned out like he had planned. But he is also an entrepreneur. And we have many discussions about entrepreneurship. He is a person who is methodical, mindful of others, a listener, but also a man who is filled with wisdom. So I want to welcome to Dr. Rodney Unmasked, my friend, my brother, Jeff Henry.
Hmm.
Good
Hello,
morning.
hello, hello, Dr. Rodney Unmasked. Hello, Doctor. How are
Man,
you?
it's good. It's good to have you on the show this morning.
It's a pleasure to be here.
You know, with all the discussions that we've had over the years, the one thing that I think that has penetrated my soul and which we have in common is our journey around divorce. We've both experienced that, but we've also experienced what it means to go inside, spend time with yourself, do some work, that internal work that happens when you find yourself alone and you are a man of God like I, uh, and we have to find that place of solace when there's deep conflict of the soul, if I may. But I want to begin this discussion around the ideal of how important solitude is in the journey. And in times like this, where we are all so connected to every kind of information, data gathering, and busyness, I want to talk about how important it is to find that place of solitude. And Jeff, you're the perfect person to talk about that. This is something in my spirit that tells me that you are that person who understands and values the importance of solitude. I mentioned to you, and I'm going to let you share a little bit about thoughts that you might have regarding the importance of solitude. One morning during my meditations, the Spirit dropped in me these two words: scarcity, solitude, solitude, scarcity. Scarcity, meaning a lack of, and solitude is that state of being alone. Jeff, when you think about those two words, what comes to mind for you? And if you don't mind, before you even get into that question, would you mind just kind of sharing a little bit about your journey and things that people may just want to know more about you as an individual?
All right. Well, you nailed it, Dr. Rodney, with those two words, isolation and scarcity. But
Mhm.
give a little backdrop on myself. I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. Grew up in a split home. My parents separated when I was a minor, so I don't know what it was like to have two parents underneath the same roof. My mother moved on. My dad moved on. Around 10, and lived with my mom. Then around 10, between 10, 11, 12, I want to say less than 12. Uh, I didn't like the way mom was running the program. And I would visit my dad and my stepmother periodically on the weekends, but I wanted to relocate there. And so I ran away. I literally ran away.
Mm.
And I started maturing at that age because when I shared with my dad and my stepmom what my wishes were, he made it clear to me. He said, Jeff, he says, I'm not telling you what to do, but you're more than welcome to come with us. He said, but it's going to lead into murky waters, basically the courts. And he says, son, I'm not going to be able to speak for you. You're going to have to be able to speak for yourself. So I had to start making decisions at a very young age about what was it that made Jeff happy or complete or whole. Um,
Mhm.
anyway, that all worked out pretty well. There was some things over the years that had to be worked out, but and I thank God that they have. It's experiences like that. Experiences you mentioned. I was a police officer. Yes, had a lot of fun doing that. I was in the military. I did a career there. Served in two combats. Uh, I didn't go to Iraq. I was actually fortunate to stay stateside when that happened. But the
Okay.
second one is what really, really, if all the other things hadn't changed my life, that second one really did, and it taught me about these words, isolation, and also the scarcity thereof.
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
my job in that second combat over in Afghanistan was searching for landmines.
Landmine. You were
And if
searching for
that doesn't
landmines? My God.
and if that doesn't scare you, I don't know what will. If
Hmm.
that doesn't help you form a relationship with God and or take the relationship that you had with God and bring it to another level,
Hmm.
and or if you are a non-believer, even make you think remotely about a God being out there. If an occupation like that doesn't do it, I don't know what will.
Hmm.
It's equivalent to, after the fact, it's equivalent to playing Russian roulette every day.
Wow. I can't imagine. I can't imagine, man. Yeah.
That experience taught me that there needs to be some solitude, some one-on-one time
Hmm.
with your creator. you
Hmm.
know um I can't, I live by it. I make no excuses about it. I make no I have I'm I make no apologies about it. It
Hmm.
is part of my daily regimen.
Yes.
It's just who I am. It's just a part of my life. If I
Hmm.
don't take out time with God on a daily basis, not just on Sundays, but if I don't take out time with God on a daily basis, I feel like I'm off track.
hmm You know, I want to dig into this a bit today, and hopefully somebody who may be listening to this today will find that oftentimes our journey is filled with peril. Jeff has extreme cases of peril, right? He's out in a battleground, a war, looking for landmines. I don't know how much more perilous that can be. And so at some point in time, you got to find that place internally of peace. Now, Jeff, like me, understand the value of centering ourselves around the peace that God gives us. But what if our life events that are happening to us on a day-to-day basis is literally calling us into a place of solitude, into a place where the phones go off, the television is turned off, no radio, no worship music. And I'm even going to go as extreme as to say, not even opening up your Bible, but sitting still and being a transmitter or someone who could absorb something that you didn't realize was available to you. I think the power of solitude, and we see this as a theologian, I know that there's people throughout history have understood the power of going out into the desert, um, people who have created communities outside of society. History is littered with people who have made decisions to disconnect themselves from the normal way of living. And with Jeff, Jeff is talking about extreme cases, divorces. You know, what do you do when you're young and you see your parents break up? I've had that as well early in life. What do you do when you are put into a role, a business role, or you are financially uh, committed to fulfill certain kinds of obligations and you cannot? I've been in that space as well. When you have these extremes of life, is it possible? And I use the word being called into solitude, which means, Jeff, what I'm trying to reference is there a number one, I know there's a need for this, but is it a being pulled into the external conditions that exist for everybody, no matter how extreme they are? The question I have is whether or not I'm literally being pulled into, and the circumstances that are around me, the environments that are around me, are literally signals that I need to be in solitude. Is that a possibility? Jeff, what do you think about that?
Dr. Rodney, you nailed it. You nailed it. And you know what? You used the word extreme.
Mm,
Um, I want to pull back a little from my experience as my combat experience, because I want everyone to know that this is a human situation. It's a humane situation. This is not just the military. So I don't want to separate myself from everyone else. You know, when I came back from overseas, and I spent the year in the hospital due to some injuries. During that time, I had developed a very bad drinking problem. Found out later that I was using drinking as a way of coping, self-medicating.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it be drugs or alcohol, whatever it is, people, I call it the great disconnect.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they do it too. So anyway, I wind up going through extensive therapy. And for all the listeners, I want them to know there's nothing wrong with therapy.
Nothing
Nothing.
wrong with
It
therapy.
is a
I
it
agree.
is a phenomenal thing that
Yes.
God has graced us with. It
Mm-hmm.
is a phenomenal thing that God has graced us with. Clinically, I was diagnosed with what's called PTSD, post traumatic stress disorder. But I want the listeners to know you do not have to serve in any armed forces to experience any type of post traumatic stress.
Mm-hmm.
The
Mm-hmm.
daily ins and outs, the ebbs and flows of life. I like to call it the treadmill. The treadmill. You know, when you're on a treadmill, you're moving, but you're not going nowhere. If that makes sense. you
Mm-hmm.
you could even work up a good sweat too. You know what I'm saying? But you ain't covering no ground.
That's right. That's right.
And
Yes.
the world and society is designed to be a treadmill to keep you active. You know, I got this saying, I'm looking at my office, it says, never confuse activity or being busy with results.
Mm-hmm.
And so, society, social media, everything that's going on now is just designed to keep you busy, keep you off track.
Yes.
And there are signs and symbols going on around us. We say it to ourselves, but we don't listen. You know, we say it all the time. Man, I need a break. If I could just get a break, or we'll postpone it. You know, this whatever day you may have off, if it's a Saturday or Friday or whatever day throughout the week, because now everyone works all type of hours and things of that
Mm-hmm.
nature. They just say, "Oh, my next day off, I'm going to take a break."
Mm-hmm.
That break that you're talking about is that solitude piece.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and for the listeners, I want to clear something up. I don't mean solitude for the sake of just sitting there doing nothing, because that's called idle time. Like when you sit in your vehicle and it's just running.
Mm-hmm.
And idle time leaves room for bad things to come into play. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking about solitude with a purpose. I'm talking about
Okay.
solitude with a purpose. I'm talking about solitude from a godly perspective. As a matter of fact, I was
Mm-hmm.
out this morning having my solitude moment before this interview, and it just hit me. It hit me. God spoke to me and He said, "What can you lose by
Mm-hmm.
taking out some quiet time with your Creator? He's not going to tell you anything wrong.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He may share some things with you you may not like."
Mm-hmm.
You know, and most of those things would probably be about yourself. You
Mm-hmm.
know, a friend of mine calls that the mirror work, doing the mirror
Mm-hmm.
work.
Mm-hmm.
But He's not going to tell you anything bad.
Mm-hmm.
He's not going
Mm-hmm.
to tell you anything bad. He tells you everything good, and it keeps you grounded. I found that it keeps you grounded. It keeps you focused in spite of all of the noise and chatter and the treadmills that are going on around you. It
Mm-hmm.
is essential. You know, it's a way of doing more with less.
Yes. That's
You know,
that's interesting. Can I can I add I believe there are a number of things that are prohibitive to people from having that place of solitude or seeking that place of isolation. And one of them, outside of the regular work and grind, all of those responsibilities, places of accountability that we have and we've created, and some of it's been cast on our shoulders, whether we like it or not. But it's the mental space where um, there is the fear of dealing with ourselves. And you use the term mirror work. But can mirror work also be that place, that great divide, where we are fearful of dealing with our demons. What I mean by demons, folks, all of the negative energy, all of the ways that we have adopted that are prohibitive to us being healthy, health, having healthy relationships with ourselves and with others around us. The absence of love, the feeling of love, and things that prohibit us. And when I say use the word things, I'm talking about thoughts that prohibit us from feeling valued. And also the aspect of solitude and solitude scarcity as a um, reality for most of us. Maybe that we do not feel safe with our own selves. And that can come down to a number of different things. Never being taught to value yourself, always being seen as a something for somebody else. And it's easy to get into that because society, particularly in dealing from a male perspective, the entire male perspective around what it means to be a good man, all of those concepts are built around how well we do what we do. Produce, not about being, not about us having a good heart and just being valued for being versus doing. So there's a lot of conflicts, I think, Jeff, that we all deal with internally, and it creates the fear of going inside and dealing with these thoughts, these ways and practices that we have gathered to um, prevent us from ever placing real value, true value on ourselves. And like you, I love God. I've learned to love myself. And in doing so, I believe that solitude has played a real part in my growth and development. When you think about your story, our story, collective story, as two men who have, and I'm doing this with intentions because I believe everybody needs to understand that, in my opinion, especially for men like Jeff and I, we've had to do a lot of problem solving because a lot of problems have been presented to us. And it's not because of somebody else, because of some of our own choices, right? It's
Right.
because of some of our own choices. And
Right.
so, what solitude has done for me, Jeff, and you can speak to this, what solitude has done for me is help me to realize that I have to take radical ownership of my decisions.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
And in doing so, taking radical ownership of my decisions, I can now say I made some really bad choices that caused me some significant issues and caused others harm as well. Not out of intention, not knowing at all times, but still taking radical ownership of those decisions and choices. And I also see oftentimes now where those decisions had no place or basis in me sitting myself down and getting into a place of solitude where I could make different choices. And I think God would have presented for me different choices than I had made. The
Oh,
absence of solitude is what I see as a consistent pattern, the problems that I've had to solve in my life because of my choices.
right, right. And that's Dr. Rodney. That's say, man, you're going deep. You said a lot. You said a lot of words
Mhm.
that I could touch on. I want to
Okay.
clear something up though. You said that you love the Lord. I love the Lord as well too. But I think it'd be fair to the listeners to know that I didn't always love the Lord.
Mhm.
I was mad at him for a very long time. First, I didn't believe then in him, and then when I started to believe, I felt happy for a moment, but then it
Okay.
seemed like everything around me just started falling apart. Loved ones started passing away. My dad passed away when I was young, relatively young, just a lot. And I was angry. I was angry at him for so long, for so long. And and it sent me on this quest of because in spite of my anger, I still kept waking up every day. I'm waking up mad every day, going to sleep mad or bewildered, wondering, and then waking up angry. And it sent
Yes.
me on this journey of why me? Why do I exist? Why all of this? And
Why?
and it one of the things that my dad did help me with is that he valued this God. We didn't really get into it, but he just made it clear that there was no doubt in his mind that God existed.
Mhm.
So I wanted to find out about this God who took my dad away. And so it sent me on this journey. I started probing the Bible, and you touched on some other things. So with doing that, it made me do the mirror work. I had to look at me. What role did I play in this? Because the part of why is he even waking me up?
Mm.
And then as I got deeper into his word, and you don't have to go far, you can start in the beginning, Genesis,
Mhm.
and see how he created man and his image. So, okay, so I got part of him in me. He breathed the breath of life in me. You
Yes.
know, that made me realize that I had value. Once I realized I had value and that I wasn't here by mistake or by default, it made it easy for me to love me,
Mm.
which made it easy for me to love him. Because scripture also tells us that he is, people want to know what he looks like. It says he's love. God
Yes.
is love.
Love. Yes.
God is love. And so then I realized that all the things that were happening, that I felt were happening to me, were actually happening for me.
Mm. That's an awakening.
And I realized that I needed to stop going through stuff and begin to start growing through stuff.
Okay.
It's a big difference there when you put that R in
Hmm.
there.
Very good.
And so, in order to grow, you have to take inventory and accountability for where you are
Hmm.
so that way you know what you got to do, or at least put you on the path to where you want to be.
Yes.
Hence the mirror work.
Yes.
It's not going to be pretty
Hmm.
when you look at yourself. You want to think the best of yourself at all times, but
Right.
it's not going to be pretty.
Hmm.
And but it's okay though. It's
Hmm.
okay because your why still exists. If you're listening to this, if you woke up, you have reasons, you have purposes, not just one
Hmm.
purpose. You have
Hmm.
purpose. You don't accomplish a purpose and then that's it. You know,
Yes.
you have purposes. You know, your life will be over, or your purposes will be over when your life is over, whenever
Hmm.
that may be.
Hmm.
That's when you've completed your mission here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's okay. One of the most one struggle for me was when I got divorced, and my stepdad gave me a very wonderful math equation. For all of those math enthusiasts out there, this may blow your mind. For those of you
Mm-hmm.
who are not math enthusiasts, trust me, it's very, very easy to do. And
Good,
this is
because
what
I'm
he
not
said,
really good at math.
huh? Well,
Good, because I'm not really good at math. Go ahead.
okay. Well, look, this even a third grader could get it. My stepdad came to me as I was plagued and troubled by my divorce, and he said, "Son," he said, "Jeff," he said, I don't know I don't know what all you did wrong. I don't know what all she did wrong." He said, "But this is what I want you to do, son." He said, "Take 50% of the blame." He said, 100% of it has happened. You know, the divorce is happening. 100% has gone down. He said, "Take 50% of the blame. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what that sounds like." He says, "But own 50% of it and give the other 50% to her, whether she wants it or not." He
Mm-hmm.
said, "Move on with your life."
Mm-hmm.
That simple math equation helped me to stop beating myself up.
Mm-hmm.
And it helped me to grow through that painful time. Nobody gets married to get divorced. If you get married to get divorced, something's wrong with you.
Right.
So it's one of those things you never see coming, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that math equation, that simple math equation, 50-50, it helped me stop beating up myself. It helped me to start, you know, looking at myself, and now I'm growing in another level in regards to that as well too.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can see why people don't want to do the quote unquote mirror work, because you got to take a hard look at yourself. You know, there's a little church saying that goes around. A lot of people
Mm-hmm.
say the devil made me do it, or the enemy
Mm-hmm.
made me do it. But for those deep thinkers, or those you know, theologians, they say that the enemy is really the inner, INNER, inner me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times it's our choices. It's our choices that we choose to do these things that we're not so happy about the results for.
Yeah.
You know the way to break a generational curse? Make a generational choice. Just
Mm-hmm.
make a different choice. That's all you got to do.
Yeah. Powerful. Very powerful. You know, Jeff, I heard accountability. I expressed radical ownership.
Radical.
You expressed, by the wisdom of your stepfather, taking 50% ownership within that marriage that dissolved and giving it the other 50% to that other person,
Right.
and then forgiving yourself
Right.
in that process, being gracious enough to know that everything that I had anticipated this marriage to be didn't become, and for a number of reasons.
Right.
But what I'm hearing, and I 100% agree with in all this discussion, this very powerful and thought-provoking discussion, is that we have to realize that if we spend time thinking, reflecting, disconnecting ourselves from our normals and spending time with God in a way that is intentional, I mean, with intentions, and I can even say with expectations. Now, I started this with a statement around solitude and the scarcity of it. And I can see just through this conversation alone that solitude was something that I was missing early on in my life and appreciating it. And yet I can now look back over the years, and I'm talking about I'll be 65 in a couple few weeks.
Okay.
I can look back and I can see that there were certain things happening where I was literally feeling called to solitude and I ignored it. I can literally see it now. You know, they say hindsight is 20/20, right?
Yeah, yeah,
But I can
definitely.
literally understand that those circumstances that was happening in my life was calling me to a place of solitude, a place where I could center myself around my my connection with God. And some people listening to this may not use the term God. They might use the term the universe, whatever
Right.
term you
Or
use,
higher power. Yeah.
right? Understand, I believe it's important to know that you are going through this life and being called to a place where you can literally find new meaning in your life and make better choices in the process of your life. But you have to get beyond the fear of being disconnected, of being thought strange by others, and also the fear of dealing with the consequences of who you have become in the choices and decisions you've made. Those demons, those ones that undervalue you. This is a time for you to reflect on what I believe is a God-given choice to literally change your life and the trajectory of your life. And Jeff, I love what you stated about purpose, fulfilling purposes as you go along and making better choices. In isolation and solitude, you may be able to make a choice that goes beyond the temporary, but a generational choice. I love that statement.
Yes.
A generational choice. And I tell you, folks, we can go on and on with this particular subject. And I'm going to say to you that this episode, episode 4, there will be a continuation of this conversation in episode 5. Jeff and I are going to be in a discussion that continues this conversation, and we want you to tune in to it so that we can together determine how important and empowering it is to be able to sit alone without the phones, without the noise of the world, and also reconciling, becoming friendly with who you are and what God says you are. He will show you those things in solitude. It is a matter of you and I making a choice. Is taking that phone call that important that you miss an opportunity to hear what God is wanting to speak to you? Is the scrolling in your social media feeds so provocative and entertaining that you miss that important decision and the opportunity to not just change your life, but someone else's life that you might be responsible for? It's your choice. But in solitude, I believe, like Jeff, I believe we can make better choices. And so I'd like for you to pass this information along. Dr. Rodney Unmasked and Inspired episode 4, and we'll be coming back real soon with episode 5. Thank you for listening, and God bless you.